Nvidia has seen similar pullbacks in the past, during which the stock either stabilized or caught up with its recent advances. Naturally, it then makes a parabolic move. Do you believe that the stock is currently consolidating before rising in response to the next significant catalyst? Yes, that is our perspective. As more people examine not only the October quarter, but also the demand trend over the following 6 to 9 months, and you consider the current state of Blackwell yields, we believe that order flow might reach the tens of billions. You begin to examine a stock that I consider to be reasonably priced, as I don't tend to notice changes in a company's name such as X has gone to Y. That is CR. However, take a look at the numbers. You essentially had $1.70 in earning potential, and you will now have $5 or $6. Therefore, it also depends on the numbers. Furthermore, it's similar to piecing together a puzzle. Observe what Jensen discusses and pay attention to what the hyperscalers, Amazon, Google, and Nvidia, say. Take a look at the incredible growth in the semiconductor industry that we have witnessed in Asia over the past 30 years. After that, you examine Oracle and use cases such as Palantir and ServiceNow. This is only the start. It's the start of $1 trillion in AI capex, not that it's a straight line. I simply want to draw attention to one point, which is something institutional investors frequently say. Well, look at Cisco's chart from the late 90s, and then look at Nvidia's chart from the present. They look similar. Tom, you also covered it back then, and I covered it back then. 90% of Cisco's clients back then were essentially startups with erroneous and upside-down business models. Many of such businesses closed their doors. Who are the current purchasers of this? Big tech, after all, has cash on hand of over $1 trillion. And when you look at it from an enterprise standpoint, you can see where these resources are coming from. Simply put, I don't think it's appropriate to just put up a chart. I understand the story, but in terms of the IT boom, this is a 95, or perhaps 96, moment rather than a 99 one. Hey, that's a very good point. That's important to note, because Cisco was selling devices at considerably lower unit costs rather than $100,000, $120,000 chips. Additionally, consider the users' identities. They vanished. Even if you consider the concentration danger in this case. Oh, Nvidia and Microsoft, 44%. Microsoft serves as a hyperscaler and middleman for the thousands of businesses who ultimately purchase the chips. Although it's not Microsoft, there isn't much of a concentration danger there. I'm just saying that it seems like you're about to leave, and naturally, the DOJ. You know, that's like a crappy Netflix episode or something that happens exactly when you need it to. They receive a subpoena after that day, despite the fact that it appears to have never happened. But merely in terms of the anxiety of September, we're in one of those modes right now. You've mentioned fastening your seatbelt, but I think the risk of hacking is significantly higher on the 31st than it is on the present day. And for that reason, despite a few anxieties about macro, the Fed, job numbers, anything you want to talk about, I believe we're headed for highs. Yes, what do you think? Where did those DOJ and Nvidia rumors originate, by the way? Since I witnessed that press explosion, I believe an article, AR, or something else was released. The irony is that, should they receive the subpoena, it won't matter because, let's go back a step. Google and the DOJ will face off in court next week. We're just in that kind of mood. The bullseye of big tech has returned and grown stronger. I mean, Nvidia is just a member of the group, just like Apple, Amazon, and Google. I am aware that you are still mentioning, that even in the event of a subpoena, they will undoubtedly go through a procedure with the DOJ, but that procedure is lengthy in terms of antitrust, correct? Yes, I understand. Fantastic. You know, I might want to pan out a little further and talk a little bit about our webinar from 9 months ago. You used a few topics that you truly enjoyed as your main points of discussion. It's clear that you were fond of artificial intelligence, AI, and the software companies that work in this field, such as Palantir. You also found cybersecurity and its significance to be interesting. We're in September now, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on your most recent updates regarding the key themes and how they've evolved over the previous 9 months. Indeed, it appears that the themes are still relevant, and demand has likely increased even faster than anticipated. particularly in relation to the use cases. I believe that the use case's sudden and explosive growth was something we were not prepared for. I think this is being seen in a nice way. The critical element, in my opinion, is that the models have just reached a point where businesses are starting to show that they have use cases in the energy, healthcare, and financial sectors in addition to being ready to pay. That's been the fuel that has accelerated this whole AI revolution. So I'd say where we are today, maybe we expected from an overall demand perspective to be where we are in September. We probably thought we'd be here in January or February. So maybe it's about 6 months ahead of where we expected. I think names like Palantir and ServiceNow have really been put on the radar. On the other side, maybe what we didn't anticipate on the negative side is when you look at names like Salesforce and others, how AI was really going to disrupt sales cycles in software. Even while it's a significant stimulus for the next 12 to 18 months, I actually think in the near term it's nearly a disruptor of sales cycles. Yeah, that makes sense. But that goes back to the reason I usually talk about the early internet. We are going to go through periods with speed bumps, and I feel like we're going to go through phases where things might overshoot. People might respond negatively or favorably. But that's why this is my second journey to Asia in the previous month. You don't discover the AI revolution in a spreadsheet. You don't locate the 154 of an office building in New York. I believe it just comes down to demand and what we're seeing. And I think you'll come away from the meetings in the next 2 weeks with a sense that speaks to the larger need. Yep, that's right. And I believe one of the stocks that did caught investors by surprise this year, because of a misstep the company made, is CrowdStrike. I just appreciate your view on that. Indeed, historically speaking, it was a blot on cybersecurity, particularly for CrowdStrike. George, I believe, would agree that this was a terrible software update that will be discussed for years to come and that it will most likely alter the future of software upgrades. That's the reason it caused CrowdStrike so much harm. What's surprising, in my opinion, is that we spoke with integrators and customers for the next week after that occurred to find out if they intended to transfer. How did the sales cycles fare? It was discovered that only roughly 3 to 4% of sales cycles were interrupted. If you go back 2 or 3 months earlier, the CrowdStrike quarter was far better than anyone could have predicted. This updated version fixes grammar errors and improves readability without sacrificing the text's length or organization. And defense industries. But underneath that, when you consider industrial test and measurement, we are computing across the board. Naturally, there is a lot of excitement around artificial intelligence and accelerators. But these are really the 3 main legs of our computing stool. It makes sense that the AI portion is exciting, because you release some pretty amazing numbers for 2027. At first, many people thought those numbers were impossible. But as time goes on, it appears that they are reasonable and rational projections, don't they? Furthermore, we observe the computing market in the AI Acceleration Partnership as well as several